Hello, my science lovers. We've got a new episode of This Week in BS. We've got Shannon Q. We also have Amanda from Brief Brain Facts. We're going to break down this Alex Jones stuff. Psychosis, accountability, Sandy Hook stuff. There's so much to unpack here. And your time is important to us. Your wait time is approximately 20 seconds. Thank you for being here. Alrighty, let me unmute everyone. Unmute. All right. So, hello, welcome Shannon, welcome Amanda. It's great to have you guys here today.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Nice to meet Amanda. Already met you.
Met previously, just moments before we went live. All right. So, what I thought we could do, welcome everybody for being here. Normally I have like a patron video at the beginning, but I know Shannon's kind of short on time, so I want to jump right into this. So I'll show my awesome patron video at the end. So, what I thought I would do is go around, have everybody introduce themselves, what you do, who you know, what you like. So let me start with Shannon, since this is the first time you've been on my channel.
I know, I can't believe that. We've known each other forever and been on so many streams and stuff together. But yeah, it's the first time I've been on your channel. Hi, I'm Shannon Q. I have a YouTube channel called Shannon Q, where I talk about the intersection of psychology and faith and engage in complex conversations and dialogues with people of all belief systems in order to model better conversations. And I'm excited to be here too. I'm going to be learning a lot about Alex Jones and going a lot, I think. I did that a lot in the pre-show. I went, quite a bit.
You're aghast.
Yeah, I'm all aghast. Exactly.
You're all aghast. Well, thank you for being here. And then back we have Miss Amanda Cortex from Brief Brain Facts. I think this is what, your third time being on my show?
Yeah, something like that, I believe.
Man, it's like you're almost family now, huh? Yeah. So tell us about yourself, what you do. I'm sure everybody has an idea, but tell us again anyway, because it's always nice to hear.
Well, my name is Amanda, and I am also a fellow YouTuber. I have a YouTube channel that focuses on brain and behavior. It's more kind of lecture-based instead of conversational, but every now and then I will do a Q&A session from time to time if anybody has any questions about the brain and how that can influence behavior, et cetera, et cetera. But I love what I do, and I thank Mel for having me back.
Well, thank you for being here. So let's jump right into this. I don't know if a lot of people out there in the world know about Alex Jones. So let's just say he's a dude that runs a site called InfoWars, and they've been taken down on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter for promoting what they call hate speech. Now, most recently, just a few weeks ago, he had a deposition. He is under fire. Well, I hate to use that term. Let's say some people are suing him. The Sandy Hook parents collectively as a group are suing him for defamation and libel. And the fact that a lot of what he has said has brought about a lot of harassment to these parents who, had lost their children in the Sandy Hook shootings years and years ago. Alex Jones had maintained, essentially, that it was fake, it was staged, and he used a lot of his influence, which in turn harmed these families. So now he's saying that he has a psychosis. Now, we should all preempt this by saying, I am not a therapist or a doctor or a clinician. I know Amanda isn't, and Shannon isn't. So we're not here to diagnose Alex Jones. That's not what we're going to talk about. We want to look more at the history of this thing and also kind of discuss a bit of ethics and accountability. So, who wants to go first with their thoughts?
Amanda's so much more well-versed. Before we start, I just want to say I'm a big fan of Amanda's channel. You should subscribe. It's awesome. She's much more well-versed than I am, so I'm going to let Amanda start.
Well, unfortunately, I am familiar with Alex Jones. I would label him in the category of him just being a conspiracy theorist. He has a lot of delusional thought patterns. I think we were talking about his conspiracy regarding frogs in the water and how it's turning people gay.
Yeah.
So he's a big proponent of these theories. It's actually a good grift for him. It has been very profitable in the past. He is a personal friend, if you will, of Donald Trump. And so I think he kind of has an ear there. He's a pretty terrible human being, though, considering the fact that with the Sandy Hook shooting, which was a terrible tragedy, and the fact that our government hasn't done anything to help prevent any other massacres beyond trying to, I guess, arm teachers and train them to be in a combat zone, which that there's just not enough training for that. They're there to teach, but that's a whole nother story. Sorry.
Yes. Oh, it's okay. The Indiana thing where the teachers were shot with like rubber pellets was
right.
pretty, execution style. So that's where we're at in America. But carry on, please.
It's horrible, but
hug my flag for a sec.
It's a horrible situation, and he basically stated that these that nobody was killed in Sandy Hook. That they were all crisis actors, and or some sort of type of acting in order to try to get gun legislation passed. That was his justification for his behavior, at any rate, and it has led to a lot of harassment of the parents by his audience. And this is actually the main reason, or the primary reason, that his channel on YouTube, his Twitter, I guess his Twitter, what is that called? His Twitter account, his Facebook account were pulled down from those sites is because of this incident, because it ended up hurting these parents. There was a situation where a parent had to move 7 different times to get away from his audience that were there to attack them.
More recently, you have the parent who died by suicide just a few weeks ago.
Right, yeah. It's just, God, it's heartbreaking. These parents aren't able to visit their child's grave for fear of harassment by his audience. And so I guess we're at the point of what is his responsibility in this? Because of the fact that these platforms, these social media platforms did take him down, did remove his content. There's some sort of a clear incident, a clear case to be made that they do find that his information that he's peddling is toxic or is harmful to the general public. And, there are some people on the left even that don't agree with the standpoint of actually having his content removed for, freedom of speech violation. I think that when it comes to starting to harm another individual or harm a group of people, you've got to consider and outweigh the benefits of should he be able to speak, or should people not have to endure the type of harassment that they're experiencing because of that speech?
Right.
It's violent, and he does rile up an audience. He really does, and he takes advantage of other mentally unstable people. And I guess this goes to where he is on his defense, because they did file a defamation case against him for the type of things that they had to endure due to his problematic speech behavior. And his defense is now that he experienced a temporary state of psychosis.
Yes.
And
I had seen, oh, I know, I had seen on a few of the things, I was reading quite a bit about it, is that he felt like he he actually was encouraging and getting a lot of confirmation bias for what he feels was his psychosis by having other people confirm his particular perspective. So he sought out people that actually, he said, well, I had an FBI guy on there that told me that it was fake, and I had this other person on my show that told me it was fake. I'm like, but you're seeking out people that are confirming your particular delusion or whatever it is. So it's just kind of like he really wasn't looking for anything outside of his delusion, but he blames that as making it worse.
Which is so interesting if you think about it, because it was him that started it in the first place.
Right. Shannon.
He was the one. Sorry, Shannon.
Oh, it's okay. Go ahead and weigh in.
No, you have fascinating things to say. I'm enjoying listening. So I just find I struggle with the justification that I looked for affirmation and found it as a defense. Mm-hmm. So he believed this initially and perpetuated it, and then looked for other sources to affirm it so that he could solidify that perpetuation. Him seeking out affirmation and finding it, which isn't difficult to do, isn't a defense because those people that he sought to affirm his beliefs affirmed them. He actively sought to have that happen. So I don't understand how that's even remotely plausible as a defense. Like, I looked for someone to tell me I was right, and they did. So how can you hold me accountable for that?
You know, it's my psychosis. So I'm like, okay. And the man may genuinely have some form of a mental illness, and we're not trying to diagnose what he is, and we're not saying that he's faking it. We're not saying that. But what we're trying to pick apart is, where's the accountability lie? Is he accountable for that? He owns the site InfoWars. Nobody else owns that site but him. But you have internet service providers, and you have internet providers as well. And there's certain terms of service. And so some, ISPs or whatever, some hosting sites would likely not allow his website to be part of their service. But others, it's a bit more loose. So it comes down to terms of service. But a lot of them usually they can cancel it at any time. So you're like, okay. But as Amanda had pointed out, Twitter took down his site. Facebook took down his site. YouTube took down his site. So they clearly are seeing, like, they don't want to touch this guy with a 10-foot pole. So
I'm interested. Was that before or after this litigation started?
It was after.
Was it after?
Well, they started. They initiated it, and then they pulled it down.
I see. Because I saw that he was removed in 2018, but I wasn't certain when the litigation started.
Yeah, I think this started somewhere in 2018 too.
Yeah, this might have been at the same time.
But yeah, they initiated it because they could demonstrate clear harm that was done to them based off of his rhetoric.
And I guess they didn't want to be connected to him in any form or fashion if they were perpetuating.
It's weird that it took so long, because there's obviously they were getting a lot of complaints prior to this happening.
Yes.
And I think it's very strange that it took such a long time for him to be deplatformed in that manner. Of course, I've been so deplatformed. They're trying to stifle my free speech and things like that. And it's like, well, don't rile up people and get people harmed. I mean, these people were receiving death threats.
This is where I think it's interesting with the whole free speech thing. Free speech means that you don't go to jail for your words. Right. Unless it's a threat against another person. Then that's something else entirely. Free speech just covers the fact you can speak out against the government without the government putting you in jail for it. This isn't a free speech issue. The man could go file a permit, stand in the middle of town hall, and say whatever he wants to say and not go to prison. Right. That's absolutely fine. You still have to file permits for that in order to utilize your free speech, but you won't go to jail. This is not the same thing. This is a privately owned company type of situation where they're like, okay, we're housing your website. We can take it down if we want to, and just, axe your service. They can reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. That's just been the history of how our country's gone about, and maybe a few others. As far as capitalism, that's the way it goes. Nobody is entitled to give you anything at all, and that's not free speech. If you're banned from Twitter because enough of the other customers are saying, this customer is loud and noisy and we don't like to share the same coffee space, so let's pretend it's a coffee shop. We have all of these other Twitter users who are like, this person is horrible, we don't like them. Twitter can say, okay, yeah, they are causing problems. They're causing harassment of other people. They're harassing my customers. Let's just boot them out. It's not that much different. It's a privately owned thing. It's not a government-owned commodity. So
I think that they are suing Alex Jones based off libel, right?
Right. Yeah, I think it's libel and defamation.
False information.
And so, where was I going with this? I think it's interesting that his defense is temporary psychosis or momentary psychosis, especially usually that defense is utilized for criminal instead of civil cases. So I mean, I'm interested to see how this plays out, to be perfectly honest, because it is usually a criminal defense. And I don't know if it's probably been employed by civil cases in the past, I'm assuming. But, at this high magnitude, probably not.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see. I think he does have a decent case to say that he has psychosis, because you can track that, but it varies by state, how they define it. A lot of states, use certain precedents cases to define psychoses, or I guess it's the insanity defense. And one thing that I also want to note, and I think I know we were talking about this prior to starting, it was the fact that his ex-wife, tried to tell the courts when she was going through custody battles with him that he was not mentally stable. And he basically blew off that defense and was able to gain custody of their son. And now he's using that very defense. And so I think now, if he's admitting to having that type of instability to the point where his audience causes harm to other individuals, I think there's a great case now to be made that he should no longer have custody of his son.
Yeah.
Would they be able to use, in the Sandy Hook case, would they be able to go back to his custody litigation and look at the defense that he provided against having psychosis and introduce that as evidence to say...
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not public record.
A good attorney would absolutely use that.
Yeah.
Because he must have had to mount a defense if one of the accusations that was leveled against him in the custody hearing was that he's mentally unstable. He would have had to have mounted a defense in order to prove that he was, in fact, mentally stable. He would have had to, that would have been a calculated effort. And that would have been on the public record. So he either is or he is not. So that, I mean, I don't know the man, but that smacks of dishonesty to me, because if you can use it in one situation and then flip it to be the exact opposite in another situation, and the only difference between the two is that it benefits you in both situations for it to be the opposite or the antithesis.
Right, right.
I think he was mindful of that too when
Interesting.
he
so you think he had the foresight?
said temporary.
That's
temporary state of psychosis.
It's temporary.
That was in his.
It comes and goes. It's like a cold.
How would you prove that is the case, though? Because to say I've had a temporary state of psychosis retroactively, like in the past.
Yeah.
I had a one time.
Oh boy.
Or just every time I talked about Sandy Hook, because he did that frequently.
Right.
I think that would be a really hard defense for him to mount, because if it was temporary, he would have to justify how he was able to continue propagating the same information over extended periods of time in multiple
We're talking years. This wasn't like 6 months.
So that's not
years.
temporary, by any definition of temporary that I'm aware of. That coupled with the fact that he provided a counter defense to the exact contrary of that, I think would work directly against anybody with any goddamn sense.
Yep.
If he were to even say, if it was just exclusive to the Sandy Hook case, which in all it could be possible, could be possible. Let's just say it's exclusive to the Sandy Hook case. Then what about every other weird thing he's ever said? You know what I mean?
I think you'd have to demonstrate how it was exclusive, though. Like, what about that case elicited some sort of psychosis from him?
Yes,
and it didn't. He was quite crazy beforehand. to use a very layman's term there. I mean, his lizard people theory was prior to the Sandy Hook incident.
So he's either just maliciously lying, or he has genuine mental issues.
Yeah, and either way, I feel like he's going to lose something. Yes. His ex-wife can now go back to the courts and say, like, this one, it worked for him in this situation. They found that it actually wasn't temporary because of all the years he did say the same exact thing. And so therefore I should now have custody of my child. And that's a reasonable thing for anybody to go back and do. Or he's going to lose this case, right? And they're going to say, like, actually, no, you are liable. You do owe compensation to these families whom you constantly berated and constantly had, based off of your rhetoric, had your audience attack. So either way, I don't think that this is going to look good for him. I'm hoping that his ex-wife would be willing, if he does win this particular case, that she would therefore use that as evidence to support her initial request for full custody of their son.
So somebody had mentioned in the chat about they felt like the internet should be, a form of where we should be able to have free speech as a commodity, like a government type of utility or commodity. But here's the thing. Even if you go out and you're demonstrating your free speech and stuff, if you start to cause problems, like what happened in Charlottesville, or the fact that people go to protests and they get arrested, even with permits, who's going to be the internet police? Who's going to step up, and where do we draw the line? I think we're kind of venturing into that territory where we're seeing, okay, this person's rhetoric and words are causing harm to these families here. Now we have libel, we have defamation, we have harassment, we have these different types of legally defined terms that are being pushed into an internet type of situation. I think this is going to kind of give us an idea to show, okay, we know this kind of stuff causes harm to these people, especially if you're lying about a situation and you repeatedly do it to cause damage and harm to these families. Yes, and even if you did that outside of the internet, like in the mail, or you went to somebody's house and stood outside of their house with a megaphone and did all of this, that's still harassment.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Wrinkle and the Bernie Bro. Thank you. Hi, Mel. Just subbed to you in the last week or so. Love your content. Want to give you a little support. Thank you for the super chat. I'm so glad you're here. Please be certain to hop over to Shannon Q and also Brief Brain Facts and check out their stuff. They got amazing stuff, too. We all the ladies here, we're doing great.
I do want to note something about his defense of psychosis, which I guess isn't really an official diagnosis, right? Mm-hmm. So there are psychotic disorders that would be, based off of maybe dementia or schizophrenia or bipolar disorder with psychotic features, things like that. And so it would be kind of a byproduct of another major illness.
Right.
So pure psychosis in and of itself isn't a diagnosis.
Right.
And I'm not even sure if he's really legitimately using it as a defense, right? He did mention it.
I don't even know if he's been to a doctor.
Right.
You know?
Well, we have to. I don't know how his other case went about with his ex-wife. Excuse me.
Yeah.
As far as if they found that he was mentally competent.
Right.
Again, it does depend on what state you live in.
Right.
If anybody did happen to see the deposition that he submitted, you could clearly, there's a high standard for a lot of states on what insanity defense would constitute as.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, it would be, can they basically connect the dots from point A to point B? And
are they able to actually reason, and do they know what they did is wrong or not? Well,
Yeah.
Shannon, what do you think? You've been sitting there with your thinking face on.
Yeah, no, I'm just listening. I'm used to chatting all the time. It's fun to listen. So I had a couple of thoughts as you guys were talking. So I've been mulling around in my head this idea of temporary psychosis, and I'm finding it difficult to wrap. Like, I'm not a clinician. I know a bit about brains, not as much as Amanda here. So I'm actually interested in what Amanda says. So I just don't understand how your brain, without some sort of catalyst, can temporarily change its chemical composition for no reason, just in a specific situation, in order to elicit some sort of psychoses without, like she said, some sort of pre-existing.
Well, I kind of think of like PTSD or something. That's what
I'm talking about. A catalyst,
something a bit different.
Catalyst.
Yeah.
I mean, the brain is a complicated place, right? It's one of the least well-known organs of our bodies. And there is a legitimate thing that does happen that is temporary. Where it would be temporary. It's under the delusional disorders. It's temporary delusional disorder,
right?
That lasts no longer than 6 months, and people do have that, and they don't have a reason as to why that happens. But again, you've got Alex Jones out there.
That's an acute onset sort of thing.
Years, right? For multiple years, saying the same thing, and so him using that, temporary delusional disorder as a defense wouldn't hold up because it's 6 months or less.
Right. That's what I was trying to get at, essentially. Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. That seems like an acute onset thing, and it actually lasts. Like, your brain has to kind of heal from that, essentially, and or you have to kind of train your way out of it, or get therapy out of it, or medicate out of it. So in order for his defense to make sense,
it does go away.
Sometimes it does just go away.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I should look that up, actually.
It's a fascinating phenomenon. But yeah, it could go away as quickly as it came on.
Okay. But it wouldn't elicit multiple times, do you think?
No,
though, really?
No. That would not. Yeah, that would not.
He wouldn't have temporary psychosis while he's talking about Sandy Hook conveniently.
No.
And then go back to just existing in a state of regular existence, and then somehow have another acute onset that lasts in a temporary state just when he's talking about. I'm mulling around in my head.
One-time incidences too.
Right.
Like 6 months or less, and that's it for your whole lifetime.
So
right. Oh, that's even more interesting.
Okay, so Winkle, the Burning Bro. I said wrinkle because I was thinking of Wrinkle in Time, the book. So my brain was like, Wrinkle in Time. Okay, so no, Winkle the Burning Bro. So he did another super chat, so thank you. So he says, Jones claimed he was a character actor in his case against his wife, right? That no one should believe what he says. How does psychosis fly after that? That's a good question. How are you going to say I was a character actor in this case against his wife? Okay, but now it's, it's one of those things. And so that kind of thinking about the whole psychosis, temporary, delusion type of thing. So if it did happen, all right, let's say he had a delusion for 6 months and he was just railing on about it for like 6 months. Could he really retract that statement at that point and just say, I was wrong about Sandy Hook. I was wrong. I wasn't in a good place. Could he really retract that and keep his viewership?
I don't know. I think you'd have to ask his viewers because
I'm thinking he couldn't come back from that.
They've been told that he's either lying or he legitimately is unstable. So they know this. Again, it's one of those things that, confirmation bias that they want to, watch him for some reason, and believe what he says, because it's easier to do that than to fight against something or to be counterculture.
Yeah, but is he actually, would he have actually taken responsibility for the fact that he was wrong? I'm kind of wondering
if he's going to make a psychotic defense,
but
insanity. He has to admit fault. That is part of it. It's the admission of fault, but he shouldn't have the punishment enacted against him because he is not mentally well. That is a standard. Like, you can't even waver on that if that's going to be your defense.
How does that track with the whole character actor thing that he just said that he brought up in his wife's case, though? Because again, that seems to bring up a contradiction to me.
Yeah, it does.
Either everything you did was you just being a character actor, and all just you putting on a show for the audience in a satirical sort of way, because it's all satire, right? So the satire means I can say whatever, and then. So he uses that as a defense to keep his kids. But then when that one part of that entire narrative, one piece of that entire narrative causes him trouble, he says, oh, but that piece, I was still a character actor. However, when I was a character actor through everything else, but when it came to this specific situation, I was still a character actor, but I was a character actor who also, when it pertains to just this, had temporary psychoses.
Well, here's the thing. He is not an honest actor in any regard, right?
Oh, no shit.
Right. He can't have his cake and eat it too here.
Yeah.
And
I'm just trying to figure out what he's thinking.
The fact that he's using insanity defense is insulting to other people that need that as their defense, because they are legitimately, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know the consequences of their actions. I think that, and by the way, it fails in a lot of cases where that's utilized, where it probably shouldn't have failed.
Aaron popped up a super chat. Let me just say, he says, I'm honestly not concerned, and thank you, Aaron. I'm honestly not concerned by Alex Jones as much as the people who continue to follow him, knowing he's either crazy, an actor, or a con man.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, these are not stable individuals either. He can say, like, I'm an actor, but they don't get that defense. His audience.
Either that, or they're just really evil people and they think it's entertainment. So.
Well, I mean, there are a subset of the population that do find it entertaining, but then they won't act on it, right?
Yeah,
they're not the ones that are
perpetuating
families, right? They're just probably just giving him the view numbers,
which gets it in front of potentially other people, though, when they share it.
Right.
It might be that lunatic that's like, I'm going to this person's house.
I mean, that's
ruining democracy.
That's part of the problem. I will maintain this forever about Alex Jones. If it weren't for the internet, he would be the guy, in the basement, those little basement windows that are kind of like covered by the dirt, and you can have them open. He would be shouting out of those windows, like, get off my property, children. You should see the frogs in the water. They'll turn you gay. I mean, that would be, and all the neighborhood kids would be laughing at him. You know what I mean? And he would be a spectacle for that own purpose, and nobody would take him seriously. But this wonderful thing, which I love the internet, I think it does provide decent information, but then you've got the very dark side of it too, about this, where you can actually build an audience based off of, and I'm sorry to use this term again, but based off of fucking crazy. I'm sorry, I don't mean crazy either. Based off of crazy, and it's troubling.
It's
my brain.
Amanda's like, I can't.
Right.
I'm done. It's Thursday, by the way. It's Thursday. There's one more day this week, and then it's the weekend. So.
My brain will get to repair itself.
I actually have to run. You guys don't need me anyway. You're both brilliant and incredibly insightful. And mostly I was just listening to all the fantastic things that both of you had to say. So I can't wait to listen to everything else that you guys have to say. And thank you so much for inviting me, Mel.
Well, thanks for being on. I'm so glad you could join.
Please invite me again.
I will.
I would love to come back.
Okay, great.
Bye. And it was so nice to meet you, Amanda. Everybody sub to Amanda's channel. She's so much smarter than me, and it's intimidating.
Oh. Shannon, it was nice to meet you as well. I'm sorry if I kind of took over the talking.
Say all of the amazing things that you want to. I enjoy listening to them. Thank you. Have a good day.
Oh my goodness. Well, that was Shannon. Go check out her channel as well. The link is in the description. But do give her a subscription while you're at it. So, oh God, it's Friday here. Okay, so it's Friday somewhere, guys. In Bo's land, it's Friday. So there you go. So somebody, try. I guess we can go scroll through a little bit of some of the comments and see what people have to say, and just maybe address a bit of that. Let's see. ScientistMel. This is from Sir Marvin Manastar. Jones has admitted he was wrong on subjects before, but he is not an actor. He literally believes everything he spouts. I don't know.
That's what his wife says.
Well, maybe she would know better than I would.
Or his ex-wife.
Yes.
His ex-wife maintains that he does legitimately believe what he says.
Well, let's see. I'm scrolling through a bit more. His viewers don't know enough to understand. He's radicalized. He has been since Waco and the Branch Davidians. Let's see. Just trying to go through. I think a lot. It's pretty much any excuse he can give to excuse his dangerous platform. Possibly, yeah. Some people talking about PTSD. They have it. STEM girl, pal, yeah. Scroll back. Paranoia is not equal to psychosis. You can have paranoid psychosis, but I'm splitting hairs. That's from Mrs. Snarky. Maybe. Jones may win a criminal case, but I think he would lose civil cases just because the standard of proof is lower in civil court compared to criminal.
It is.
That's true, Winkle. That's true. So we're trying to weigh in on this. It kind of bothers me quite a bit because I do actively talk about mental health and that there's a lot of stigma associated with that. That just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean that you're broken or messed up or wrong. I mean, especially if you're addressing it and you're coping and you know what you're doing. But when you use that as an excuse to be horrible to people, that makes my skin crawl. And then I get really angry and I just want to scream and yell. But I don't do that. But I really, really want to. So because that's not helpful. That's not helpful at all. And it feels like, and Alex may very well have a mental health issue. We're not saying that he's lying. We're not saying that. We're saying a lot of things that are going on is suspect.
I think that
that's fair.
I think he would probably meet diagnostic criteria for some sort of delusional disorder. I think that is a very valid concern.
I mean, whether he's lying or he really believes this. If he's a perpetual, habitual liar, that's
I would be inclined to kind of, defer to the people that know him best.
Yes.
His ex-wife knew him well enough to say that he was legitimately believed in these things that he did spout. And yeah, I think that he does. I mean, it's just the things that he comes up with in his mind too are so out there that I would be hard pressed to not have somebody come in to determine his mental health state. I'm surprised that this hasn't come up earlier, to be perfectly honest.
I wonder what could happen in the future. So let's say that Alex Jones does have a legitimate mental illness, and this was the driving factor of him spewing everything that he was. That was, let's just go full on with that. What do we need to do? Because, the internet is much different than like a public forum where you have people walking around, and he's not really in front of the Sandy Hook parents with a megaphone. He's not really doing that, but he is on the internet. Somebody who was doing that in IRL, in real life, as they say, would have the police called on them. They would have possibly, a psychiatric evaluation. Things of that nature would have already been initiated because this person is now standing outside of their house or going to their job or going to their friends or their family. It makes me kind of angry because I've had similar situations with a stalker. Police did nothing because he wasn't at my house standing with a megaphone. He wasn't going to my job talking directly to people. He did it in a much different way, but it was still just as damaging. So it's like, what can we do to kind of go towards saying, okay, this person is consistently causing harm for these people?
I think I'm not sure if our laws are. I mean, I know our laws aren't equipped to deal with this virtual space because because in a lot of aspects, and unfortunately, any type of mental harm that may be done, because a lot of it would be emotional harm, emotional damage. We still don't handle mental health and emotional health well in society. And so it's more like, oh, you know what, you should just get over it. And that is unfortunate, especially if we're talking about cases where people are abroad and antagonizing or harassing you. For instance, the other day I had someone harassing me pretty heavily, but the best I can do is block them. Unfortunately, it's a group of people that come in and try to harass me, and I had to figure out who they are and block them as they appear. But our laws are not equipped to handle this, and that's the unfortunate reality of the situation.
I'm hoping that this sets a precedent, though. I'm hoping that this sets a precedent that goes, okay. Because another example, there was a woman who is being, I think, charged with involuntary manslaughter, or I think that's what the charge is. I have to double check. But her ex-boyfriend was suicidal, and she kept texting him, telling him just to go ahead and do it.
That's right. I remember.
And now she's being brought up on criminal charges for contributing to his suicide.
Wasn't she found guilty?
Yes. Yeah, because she had sent messages when he said, I'm suicidal, and she was like, well, just go ahead and kill yourself. And so, words matter. So we're seeing more of the law and kind of laying the land a bit, saying, okay, this is harmful. So I'm hoping that we can kind of step into that realm and go, okay. Now, they're saying this thing didn't happen when we all know it did happen. It's causing harm to this family. He needs to stop. We need to stop something. So hopefully, we'll have some kind of groundwork laid now that we have more of these cases popping up.
Yeah, I just feel like unless there's some sort of massive outcry, I think this is a good incident of that with Alex Jones's case, because a lot of people know that the devastating effects of this. But outside of that, I just don't think that our laws will accommodate it beyond. I mean, again, this isn't a criminal case. It's still in a very civil fashion, or at least being litigated civilly. And so unless they, I think it's not going to make any difference until it becomes until there's some sort of really high level internet figure that ends up being charged with some sort of criminal case and litigated on that type of in that type of whatever legal realm, shall we say. I don't think that anything's going to change, and I'm kind of not sure if it should, and I'm conflicted, because I do want these public social media platforms to be regulated as a public utility, because I think that they do serve a purpose
Right.
There. And I think it would be a good idea to do that. But at the same time, that would mean that there would be less of a reason to deplatform somebody like Alex Jones or somebody that's harmful. But you see also at the same time other people kind of getting targeted or hit by these private companies for maybe perpetuating more, of a communist perspective. And you'll see them getting taken down, even though they just like railing against capitalism and they weren't really hurting anybody. And you'll see that. So I'm very conflicted when it comes. It's complicated. It's a complicated issue.
It is complicated. I think if it's perpetuating or initiating harm against a person or a group of people, they're actively working to harm a group of people, like the hate speech. I think the hate speech is kind of what's going to be kind of central. That's the step forward.
Even in our kind of non-virtual world and the quote unquote real world, hate crimes are incredibly difficult to prosecute.
They are.
They will not do it, even if it seems like a clear instance of a hate crime. There's an adverse reaction to that. And so doing it in a virtual world is going to be a lot more difficult to prove. And we already know
sexism and racism, and especially in the job sense, is very hard to prove as it is.
Right.
So when you're talking about, if you have a boss that's sexist or racist or whatever, it's exceedingly difficult to prove those cases as they stand.
Right.
You have to have a lot of evidence because you have to show a pattern. It can't be, they just told a joke once. That will never, it's almost like the bullying thing. In order for it to be bullying, it has to be repeated actions over a course of time. And it's so hard to get that. So proving a hate crime, it's, it wasn't just murder. Are you sure? Murder's a hate crime, but is it though? Yes, it's pretty awful, but, that then you have different types of murder, crimes of passion, drunk driving, so accidental.
It's interesting that because of the virtual environment, if you were to litigate something like this in the UK, for instance, as far as, libel is concerned, well, their standards of libel is a lot less than our standards of libel in the United States. And so it'd be a lot easier to prove that than it is in the US. And so again, that kind of complicates the virtual environment as well. It's so complicated, guys.
It really is. But we've been talking a lot about this stuff. Let me go through the chat again. We have some people pop up. Let's see. The police are not the right equipment to apply to cybercrime. It's essential to get early help for harmful individual, or you harbor the harm further. There was another case recently I just saw pop up on one of my social media feeds where a woman was fined for repeatedly reporting her stalker. And she was fined by the police for reporting her stalker, and her stalker killed her. So, so that's nice. Go Google that. And then people are like, why don't women report? So we try to work with the police. I think the police are ill-equipped. I think we need better training. We really do need a separate section of the local forces that are just about cybercrime. I mean, and I know in the state of Tennessee, it's illegal to bully somebody on the internet. At least, teenagers, they can't bully each other on the internet. It's considered a crime now. And so, because that carries over. And it's also illegal in the actual schools to bully another kid. You can file charges. So it's just, we need just special task force within the major cities, at least, that can handle the cybercrime stuff. All right. Kristen Frost Laserbeam says, I think we have two big problems in society. First of all, giant crazy turds have the ear of lots of people. Secondly, there's a whole generation of people who have been told that their feelings are the only things that matter. Well, feelings matter, but we have to separate the feelings from the brain thought stuff. What is logical versus what is feeling. Now,
Right.
sometimes they can go hand in hand and they work well, and sometimes they don't. Yeah, gosh. Have they defined that anti-bullying law properly? I'm not certain. Let me dig into that. Maybe I can do an episode on the science of bullying. There's a lot of science that's associated with what bullying does to children, not only to their development, can alter their DNA, and also changes who they are emotionally as adults. So there's all kinds of stuff associated with that. And so I
Yeah,
can dig into that.
bullying is a problem. I was bullied pretty badly in school.
So was I. I got in like 3 fights that I didn't want to get in.
Yeah, it's bad. It can be bad. I mean, it's bad now too. And now that they have a more virtual world to do it in too, it's not, you don't have necessarily the same witnesses around to say like, yeah, this did absolutely happen. And honestly, I know that when I was growing up and I had a particular bullying incident, the school didn't really handle it very well. And I'm not sure if they're doing a better job of it. I guess, Mel, this would be more on your,
Well,
you
I
would
do
know a
know
little bit
this
better than me.
much because I have taught, and they take bullying very seriously because in several states it's illegal now. So if you can establish chain of events and you have repeatedly talked to administration or your child has talked to teachers and you've kept a record of it, and then you're saying on this day they talked to this person here, 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 and here, this is still a problem. You can then not only file charges, but you can also sue. So,
Wow. I was bullied by a teacher.
I know that feeling too.
I had several bullying incidences, but this was a particular. There was a time when I was bullied in elementary school by a teacher.
That's horrible.
And she's dead now, so I'm happy about that. Sorry, guys. She was horrible. But yeah, I mean, it's hard because it's like, how do you prove that you were bullied by a teacher versus a student versus, and I remember my parents trying to get me out of that class, and then the school wouldn't remove me and exchange me or put me in. I have a twin sister, and so my parents specifically wanted us to have different classes, so we weren't in the same class.
Right.
So we had developed different friend circles and things like that, which never really worked well. But anyways, and they wanted to then put me in the same class as my sister, and the school wouldn't do it. And it was horrible.
That is horrible. Objectively subjective. Thank you for the $2. $2 to my favorite scientist. Yay! That's awesome. Thank you, objectively subjective. Yeah, I've been bullied before too. And I've had teachers say horrible things to me as well. And so I completely get where you're coming from. What's really frustrating for me is when I see people like Alex Jones actively bullying people and nothing's done. You know, and you're like, in adult land, this is not supposed to be allowed. And if he, in real life, was not on the internet, was harassing these people or instilling other groups of people to go and harass them and outside of the internet, this would have been shut down, I feel.
Well, I mean, we have a president that bullies people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I really think that as long as you are part of a certain group of people, right? If you're part of a established in the hierarchy, if you're higher up in that hierarchy, you can get away with a lot more stuff. I mean, you definitely have a different justice system applied to you. And it's unfortunate, but I think that they get away with things. I think that they're more inclined to criminal behavior because they can get away with it a lot more easily. And I mean, just look at this whole school scandal with the whole, paying bribes essentially to get their children into colleges, and not even very good colleges for that matter. But you know what I mean? And they have a different justice system applied.
You know, and I just thought that's what people did that had money. I thought they just pay their kids' way.
I mean, yeah, they do. They usually buy like a hall.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
They don't necessarily have to pay bribes to, and that they can go through the legal bribery route or the illegal route, and they go the illegal route. But I guarantee you, they'll probably not have a lot of penalties applied to them.
Yeah, it's just it's
wealthy. Crazy. And by the way, and sorry, I know that this is kind of off topic, but I just want to note that the actors and actresses that were involved in this scandal are the ones that are kind of being front and center. But there were a lot of fucking CEOs too that were involved, and nobody. And I actually tweeted out the names of all the CEOs that were involved.
Yeah.
But so that they kind of would get some attention. But of course, they're kind of like in the background chilling, you know, and allowing that these little, you know, actresses that, you know, were pretty much no-name actresses at this point, basically be the target of basically be the kind of front and center of the whole thing, when they're not the only ones that did. In fact, they're not the ones that paid the most. I mean, some of the CEOs paid like millions of dollars versus $500,000.
Just pay off my student loan. God, I'll teach your kids stuff.
Right.
Aaron A, $5 super chat. Thank you. Says Jones is a crazy bully who gets away with it because he's entertaining. That speaks to our overarching culture.
Yeah.
I have to say there is the culture. There are people who love to watch a train wreck. Jerry Springer was popular for a long time. Maury Povich is still popular. Heck, even Dr. Phil is another version of these same things, where people like to see the Christians thrown to the lions and the gladiators fighting to the death. There's some kind of morbid fascination with that. And I have to say, I have had conversations with people that probably shouldn't have lasted as long as they did, and I'm not entirely certain how I got out without getting hurt. I'm like, wow, gosh, you're so interesting. I'm like, you say like the weirdest things. Do you know how weird this is? And so, you know, my fascination has got me into all kinds of interesting situations, just out of morbid curiosity. So I get that. And then, but you know, it's kind of like when you're watching the Mythbusters, you got Adam and Jamie. Adam doesn't have an inner danger voice. He's like, I wonder if I put my mouth close to this vacuum, this vacuum motor, what's going to happen? And then his lip gets sliced open. It's like Adam has no inner danger voice. Sometimes my inner danger voice wasn't working. I'm like, wow, I'm just being inherently fascinated by this strange person who is saying the most outlandish things. I'm like, do you really believe that? Oh my God. And I'm like, okay. You're poking my ribs, and I think you might go get a meat cleaver right now. It's time for me to leave. So exit stage left. So I'm like, okay, they're touching me funny. So I need to go now. So, but
that again, it just speaks to we're not here because we agree with you. We're here for the spectacle.
Yes.
You know, again, it's your, you know, enjoying to watching the train wreck occur.
Yeah.
If again, I meant, you know, if Alex Jones didn't have the internet and didn't use it earlier on when these platforms were just arising, he would be the guy in the basement shouting out his little window, you know, and nobody would take him seriously. And it's unfortunate that he is taken seriously. There's people, when he was getting deplatformed, that will maintain to this day that he's a journalist, right?
Yeah,
and that is frightening. But that kind of speaks on the overarching problem with journalism too, how it's been so sensationalized anyways, and now it's kind of difficult to tell who's a journalist and who's not.
Right.
But he is not a journalist. He is not a journalist, and so him being deplatformed is not a journalism issue. It is an issue on the fact that he is causing irreparable harm to individuals that have already suffered so much.
Exactly.
And the fact
one
that
of the worst things a person can go through.
It drives me nuts.
It's okay. I mean, it's just one of the worst things I think a person could ever go through is losing a child.
Yeah.
And in such
These
a
are
horrific,
kindergartners, you know,
in a horrific
they're
way.
5 years old, elementary school children, for heaven's sake.
I mean, gosh, and it's just in a horrible, horrible way to not know, that you're going to kiss your kid goodbye. And it was like a very legitimate, real thing that you were really saying goodbye to your kid that morning. So and then to have to deal with that to the point you couldn't take it anymore. And then one of those parents dies by suicide just, a few weeks ago.
And the poor kids' graves get vandalized by these
horrible.
It's
horrible.
And the parents can't even visit their children where their fucking bodies are.
Yeah. It's,
because these people are so unhinged. Because of what Alex Jones says.
What he says.
He needs to be held accountable beyond belief.
Yeah. He really
whether
does.
He's mentally ill or not, he still needs to be held accountable.
He really does.
If we go with the standard of can he follow from point A to point B and reason, he could clearly do that. Yeah. And he is capable of doing this. And so that would not his little defense about being, temporary psychosis would not fly in my court, in my court of public opinion.
Yeah. And, and he will be subjected to that. I mean, that's the thing that free speech doesn't free you from, the court of public opinion. So, Winkle the Birdie Bro, $5 super chat. Thank you. But because of the internet, we are all brought together here just the way I like it. Solidarity from a distance. Solidarity. So that's right. But that's the thing. We have to be louder with the rationality than the irrational.
But it's not as fun. It's not as entertaining. And that's that's the big problem, the big terrible hill we're up against. Is that we can't sensationalize our information because there's nothing sexy about truth.
I don't know. I
think there is, of course.
Yes.
But on a marketing standpoint, it doesn't attract a huge crowd.
This is
saying something absolutely ridiculously crazy.
Do you know what I like about the show? Because I have my strictly sciencey type of show on Saturdays where I'm just all about science and I talk about a topic. The thing I like about this show is that we can take all of the things that are going on with This Week in BS and say, okay, this is what's going on. Let me tell you why that's BS. And so we can say, this is what's going on. This is what you should be looking at. To pay, you're there. You have all this. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. We pull the curtain back while y'all are over here staring at this train wreck that's Alex Jones. We're sitting here going, but who's really responsible? What's really going on here? And we kind of bring that forward. So this is like an informative way of being cheeky from time to time and making it entertaining. Brian Harris, $5 super chat. Thank you. Calling Alex Jones journalist is like calling Trump presidential.
Precisely.
Yeah. I think that's fair. So we've been on for an hour. Yay. So let's wrap it up a little bit. So we've talked about possible solutions, that this might be a groundbreaking thing that'll have people be more accountable for what they say. People should be held to their words, especially if their words cause harm for other people. That's my thought. I think that's your thought too, Amanda.
Absolutely. And to speak to your point, Mel, about, trying to get truth out there and make it entertaining, I think that, I'm glad that, you have your channel and I have my channel to try to do that, because there is a big gap. And I think we were talking about this at one point in your show a few weeks ago about, science literacy in the United States, and it's actually decreased from a few years ago even. And hopefully things like this will help with that, so that people can kind of identify fact, or near fact at least, or somebody investigating what the truth is versus absolute BS. Right.
Fresh inverse smoke. No, I can see your text. I'm just trying to catch up with all of the chats. So I have texts coming in from Twitch, from my Discord, from YouTube, and from Periscope. So I'm trying to get through all of that. Sometimes they don't come in as quickly as I would like, and sometimes they just go by the wayside because the tech isn't always 100% awesome. So no, I do see that. Let's see. I'm trying to scroll. Any last thoughts? The court of public opinion here in America applauds unapologetic a-holes. The more they refuse to apologize, the more they get applause. Yeah, but if a woman did that, that might be a different case. Or a person of color. So,
yeah,
you know,
unfortunately,
it gets a bit
they're probably
different.
not wrong.
Yeah, no, not at all. And Mrs. Snarky's been pimping out your channel, Amanda.
Right,
That's awesome.
yeah.
So yeah, please go check out her
1,000,
channel.
by the way.
Almost close to 1,000.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll be the 1,000th subscriber. So we're gonna wrap this up. This has been an awesome episode of This Week in BS. Thank you, Shannon Q, who had to hop off here and go. She double booked herself on a Thursday night. So I think she's over on Non Sequitur right now. But thank you, Shannon Q. Her link to her channel is in the description, as is Amanda's. So please go check out her awesome brief brain facts if you want to learn more about the thing that's in your noggin. She's a good person to go listen to about that. And her link to her channel in the description as well, as are both of their Twitters. And if you have questions for her, you can hit her up on Twitter. You can ask us here in the comments. I have a website, ScientistMel.com. You can go and check out the stuff that I write. I usually put all of my resources there as well, so you can check that out. So, thank you for being here, Amanda.
Yeah, thanks for having me. As always, I enjoy our conversations we have together.
I love it. I think we talk so much and we have just a great time. It's always a good chat when you're here. So, guys, if you like what I do, check out my patreon.com/ScientistMel. I'm going to show my little video thanking my patrons. I usually do that before and after, but we wanted to kind of dive right into this. And thank you for the people who contributed to Super Chats, my Super Chats. Thank you so much for that. So, you guys have an awesome night. Saturday, I will be talking about generic drugs versus name brand drugs, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. And you can check that out.
Are you planning on doing the talc, the powder? The talc?
Yes. I want to talk about the
love to
talc
see that.
thing because that was good, especially that kind of goes really well in line, especially with all the Monsanto stuff. So I'm going to throw that talc in. Maybe I'll get Nate Birdie back on and he can talk about the law and all that because that was a really interesting episode. So thank you guys for being here. And now time for my Patreon video. Woohoo!